This week on the podcast, we're going to get Scott to react to Dave Ramsey's 9-step for retirement planning. Let's get into it. Let's see how he reacts to it this week here on the Wealthy Pilots podcast.
We've got some turbulence up ahead.
Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. Thanks for hanging out with Scott and I as we talk investing, finance, and retirement. Of course, with Scott Osborn, who is the airline advisor at Patriot Wealth Planners. He is here to help folks get to and through retirement. And Scott, we haven't done a react video before, so these are all the rage out there. So I'm going to give you a react video conversation this week. How you doing, brother?
Good. Yeah, I'm not the best at keeping track of TikTok trends and what have you. So here we go. This is my first one.
I'm not sure about that either. This is it's more of a YouTube thing, but I'm sure it probably is on TikTok as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to take Dave Ramsey's 9-step retirement plan, classic Dave stuff, right? Dave's got the big empire that he has.
Yep.
And just kind of talk about some of the things. I'm going to get your reaction to some of these bullet points here, and just go through it and just kind of see where you agree, where you disagree, thoughts, whatever, right? Just kind of break it down in your parlance on what you like and what you dislike. So we'll just start with number one. He says, set retirement goals. Pretty easy.
Yeah. Obviously, I think this is a good one. Goal setting is important. I don't do a ton of discussions with my folks around like your dream retirement.
He talks a lot about that. Dream big. Yeah.
And that's great. Maybe I'm just a little bit, more of a
analytical.
Yeah, I might be a little bit more engineering type or whatever the case is. So where I'm more so like, especially Ann and I with all of our kids and like, hey, we're trying to live in the present too and not obsess about the future. Like I'm not sitting there thinking about, my dream retirement is I'm going to be on this beach this many days a year or whatever the case is. I mean, I don't know, man. We got 7 kids. I'm probably going to end up in the Midwest a good amount, checking in on grandkids and stuff too. I don't know exactly what the future holds. So I want to get directionally correct with some values. And so when I look at like values, hey, we want to be able to travel. I know I want to be able to spend a good amount of time golfing and doing hobbies. Well,
that's lifestyle goals. That's part of it. Yeah,
absolutely. We want to, be able to see our family frequently. I want work optional to be by a certain age. And so there's some values that we like to get in place. But, again, we're not obsessing over, hey, I want this model of RV to be able to take on the road 100 days a year to these locations. And I don't know. Yeah, I think, getting some directionally correct items out there is really, really beneficial. And when I apply that to some of our pilots, it's like, hey, do you want to work to your mandatory retirement date of 65 or do you want to retire earlier?
Sure.
If you want to retire earlier, that drives a different discussion, a different savings rate. If you're okay with retiring at 65 and then going and working somewhere else, that also is something different. Hey, maybe you'll, fly corporate for some, maybe get out of the FAA space or whatever and airline space and get into that corporate space for 5 years after you retire. I got some older clients to do that. That's fine.
Yeah. I'm sure that's probably pretty lucrative too. So
yeah, I mean, they don't make as much typically as a lot of the guys with the major airlines.
Okay.
However, if you're not needing to save a bunch for retirement and pay off your house and you got a lot of that stuff already done, the simple fact that you're not taking distributions for a few years can, impact your savings rate while you're young. So.
Okay. All right. Well,
long story short, it's like absolutely setting retirement goals. I would probably word it a little bit different. Like, hey, what are some of the things you value in retirement? I value retiring by this date. We value being able to travel. We value this, value that. And then we can start to get the analytics side can kick in and say, all right, let's get some values nailed down, and then we can start to get some numbers to that. So,
all right. So we're going to combine steps 2 through 4. You mentioned save, so we're going to talk about the save portion here. So steps 2 through 4 is really saving. Now Dave's got it at 15% of your income for retirement. We've talked about that many times. That growing up my age, I'm a Gen Xer, right? You're right at the line there of X into the millennial. It used to be like 10%. Well, a lot of times now they're saying, hey, 15%. But what's some of your breakdown on his steps 2 through 4?
Yeah, so 2 through 4, I kind of summarize, even 2 through 5 here when I look at them, right? So 2 is save 15% of your income for retirement. Step 3 is contribute to your 401k. Step 4 is invest in a Roth IRA. Steps 3 and 4, those are kind of nested under saving your income. And then 5 here, paying off your mortgage early. But I would kind of summarize steps 2 through 5 as like have a plan to build wealth. That's what we're talking about there. Okay.
Okay.
And so our wealth building plan, 15% of your income for retirement, I like rules of thumb to begin the discussion, but I don't know if 15% is enough or if it's too much. Like,
sure, everybody's situation is different.
Everybody's situation is different. And so, 15% of your income, I just talked to a family who this morning, who the wife just started staying at home. Well, if they were saving 15% of their joint income and now she's staying at home, are we just saving 15% of husband's income, or does that need to go to 30 now? All other things equal. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, or are they cutting their lifestyle back to facilitate her staying home and 15% of his income is fine?
Right.
So I don't know. There's all those kind of things. It's like, it's a good rule of thumb, but life doesn't really work that way sometimes. And so it's good to be able to, there's so many different, softwares and tools and calculators out there that you can start to say, maybe there's a period of time where I'm saving a little bit less. And I know I'm going to be able to save more in the future, but there's some risk involved there. Right.
Yeah.
And so, to me, the key takeaway is here, we need to be saving income for our retirement. We know we get the 401k automatically happening with our pilot clients, but one of the biggest things that we run into is, where do we save outside of the 401k? You see stuff all over on the internet. Oh, you should be saving in some index universal life insurance policy, or you should be saving in this. But there's endless things like sucking you in to try to get your attention to buy this product or that product. But at the end of the day, like, how do we make sure we have some like low cost, high growth aspects in our portfolio outside of the 401k that are also there to get us that nest egg that we're going to need in retirement?
Yeah, no, it's a great point.
Investing in the Roth IRA, there's most of our pilots are earning too much money to be able to directly contribute to a Roth IRA. But for many of them, there are ways we can do it with a backdoor Roth, and there's certain mechanics to it you want to be careful with. But that's something you should absolutely be doing, that almost every single client I bring on is not doing that, because they're like, I make too much money. And then as we walk them through the process, they see, oh, shoot, I can be doing that. And there might be a couple things we got to clean up to facilitate it, but you absolutely want to be building money over in a Roth IRA.
What on that point, Scott? Sorry, what on that point? I hear a lot of people that are high income earners talk about using life insurance policies as a way to help as well, because again, they make too much money, so that can be a good way to set some things up too.
This is one that Dave Ramsey, he doesn't include here. He is adamantly against whole life insurance policies as a tool for saving money for retirement.
But I hear a lot of financial advisors are pro it. And I know Ramsey technically is not an actual advisor. He doesn't have any certifications, but interesting.
Yeah. So there's multiple schools of thought. I tend to find myself, again, a little bit probably more neutral. I don't get religious about many of the things that are out there, because
it's a tool, right? Use it if you need it. Yeah.
And, in a lot of the guys that I work with will, there's a group of guys that I work with over at Remnant Finance that will put these policies in place for people. But we have that more in their save, what I would call, in terms of like financial order of operations, we need some life insurance, low cost term, et cetera. Then we need a savings mechanism where we're saving for cars and weddings, and we're saving for home improvement. And then we have our growth bucket. A lot of what we're talking about here in growth, I don't think life insurance belongs in growth.
Okay.
And that's where you see Dave online. He gets in a lot of friction where guys that I think are wrong are saying life insurance is the best thing to grow for your retirement. I disagree with that. And so I'm with Dave Ramsey on that. At the same token, I think there is a function for it in that save bucket where it can make sense for folks. So,
okay. All right. Very cool. Interesting.
So again, I try not to be too religious about this stuff and stay objective around like, hey, look at this financial product. Does the tool make sense for a person in their individual case? If I'm writing a book for 20 million people to read, you do have to take some stances on things. There's some generalities in there for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I'm not Dave Ramsey. We're working with people on a one-on-one basis. What's in the best interest of the client? That's it.
So. All right. There you go. No worries. No. So that was 2 through 5. All right. So let's go to 6.
Yeah.
Social security options.
Let me say one more thing, real quick for 2 through 5 here.
Yeah.
The other one here on the contribute to the 401k. for the pilot specifically, you're getting the automatic contribution from the airline. Most of them are doing 15 to 17%. And then they can put their match in there, 23,000 or 23,500 for, those under 55. And then you get the catch up contributions for older pilots. But the 401k is the largest wealth producing product, asset, whatever you want to call it, for our folks. The performance of that asset is vital, right? And that is probably one of the largest things that we're doing for folks is looking at the 401k and fixing it, getting it allocated the right way, getting out of standard default options, and managing costs, looking for results. And if we can get more performance out of that 401k over the course of your working career, you have an opportunity to probably double it one more time over your working career. And that can be a lot of money for a lot of people. So that step 3 is probably one of the biggest ones to do, that you can actually make a 7-figure difference in your net worth. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a really great point. And thinking about going to 6 here, which is study the Social Security options. That's a tongue twister. Again, depending on your way of life and the kind of income you're talking about, this can change a lot of stuff, right? Because some people just can't wait to turn it on at 62, but maybe it makes more sense to defer it to full retirement age at 67 or even 70. And again, lifestyle and how much money you're bringing in and so on and so forth and how much you've got saved can play a big factor in how you want to pick your Social Security options.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I think when you look at step 6 and then also for Dave's step 7, plan for healthcare costs in retirement, I tend to couple those two together a little bit too, because it's like, what does early retirement look like? If I just blindly go along and I just save only in my 401k and then I retire at 65 and I start taking money out of my tax deferred 401k at 65 in one day, all that is taxable income. And with some thought and some intention into my plan, and just, dude, I'm talking about an hour worth of work. You can drastically set the trajectory of what your early retirement looks like from a tax standpoint. And a lot of what we look at is, how do we set up some after-tax money in a separate account where early in retirement, I can live off of that money, let my Social Security income grow from age 65 to 70. For those that don't know, you can defer your Social Security benefits and take them at 70, and you get an 8% per year compounded, basically supplement onto your payout. And so it's worth a lot of money. And if I can increase the amount of fixed income I'm going to have at 70, generally speaking, for our folks, that is a good thing. There's a break-even analysis to do, right? For every, little bit that I'm delaying and getting more money. If I die before I turn 70, obviously the government won. If I know I'm going to die at 70, I should take them right at 62 when I can. So, but generally speaking, if you look at mortality tables and all that, it makes sense to delay if you can. But we want to build a plan for that and really bake in some good tax efficiency. Same thing for healthcare. If
when you talk about healthcare, I was going to say, sorry, talking about the healthcare, the HSA, right? It can, for a lot of folks, is a great tool if you have that option. Yeah,
all the major airlines offer the HSA. They should absolutely be putting money in there. That is missing from Dave's steps here, but that we would want that as part of our 15%. We want to be saving in an HSA if the company allows it. Well, all of our airlines do.
Nice.
All of our major airlines, I should say, the legacy carriers all do. And so you want to be maxing the HSA, grows tax-free. It's kind of like a Roth IRA for healthcare expenses. Healthcare expenses is your second largest expense in retirement behind taxes. So you're probably going to use it. So you might as well grow it.
Yeah. And it's triple tax advantaged, right? So it's a great tool.
It goes in tax deferred, comes out and grows tax-free, comes out tax-free for healthcare. That's a good investment. And so again, what we're trying to build here is a total plan that grows net of taxes. What kind of rate of return am I getting on my whole plan? That's a lot different than, this fund outperformed that fund in my 401k for 2 years. I mean, in the scope of life, that doesn't really mean that much.
What do you think about his get long-term care at 60 conversation? He's got a bullet point there where he's like, by 60, you should have it.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of goes back to the financial order operations I talked about earlier with the protect and save. Mm-hmm. A lot of the insurance policies that we'll recommend guys and gals look at in that save bucket will double down as a long-term care proxy basically. So it's there, that savings plan is there to help mitigate expenses from long-term care down the road. And so again, we like building that in because, you're able to use it for other things. It gives you more flexibility. And so, but again, Dave, because he's, writing this out for, 100 million people or whatever, he's got a gigantic platform and he's helped tons of people. So I'm a Dave fan, but he has got to take some pretty hard stances because he can't flex based off of someone's circumstances, where again, working with an individual advisor, they're going to say, hey, we got some general rules of thumb, but this is what makes a lot of sense for your case.
Sure.
So, from a healthcare standpoint, you got healthcare costs. And then what you're referencing here is a policy for long-term care. Long-term care is going to be an expense that probably 50% of our listeners or their spouses, unfortunately incur. But we tend to look at, hey, let's have a policy out there just for general risk management. And then let's try to grow to be large enough to self-insure. Again, your millionaire next door person with a net worth of $1 to $2 million, a $400,000 long-term care hit can be significant and catastrophic to their retirement plan. If you got a net worth of $5 million or more, a $400,000 long-term care hit for 3 or 4 years, you're not going to like it, but it's not going to ruin you and your spouse's retirement financially. And so that's where, we try to get more into the side of like, hey, how do we make sure we self-insure, where we just got enough assets that if we take long-term care, the assets are there to cover it.
Hey everyone, real quick, if you haven't grabbed Scott's Financial Flight Control Toolkit yet, now is the time. This is packed with tons of helpful resources and tools like this, Scott's book, The Dichotomy of Wealth, which is a pilot's guide to maximizing wealth and cash flow in retirement. You also get access to some great guides like this one, Advice Matters, which breaks down 4 key ways a good financial advisor can help you boost your returns over time. And guides like this one on the pitfalls of emotions when it comes to investing, and this one on the HCM byline investment strategy, and more. So if you'd like your very own Financial Flight Control Toolkit, just click the link in today's show description, and Scott and the team will be happy to get one sent your way at absolutely no cost to you.
Well, I want to combine the last two because you mentioned, and I was going to say, and you were talking about, Dave has this, massive empire. It's great. But you're talking to people on a one-on-one individual basis. So 8 is keep a long-term perspective, and 9 is Dave actually says work with a financial advisor, which is great. So combining those two together, right? What's your take on that? What's your reaction to that? Because I agree, right? You do have to think long-term, and you do need to work with someone who can help you with all the ins and outs because it gets a little complicated.
Yeah, I think the long-term perspective is important because, you have a situation where the larger your accounts are, the older you become, the more emotional you can be with those assets. If you're 40 and you just got hired on as a first officer at Delta, let's say, and you got $100,000 in your 401k and it gets cut in half from 100 to 50, you're putting 70 grand a year in anyways between you and Delta and your contributions. You don't even notice that your account's down 50% really. If you got $2 million in your 401k and it goes from 2 million to $1 million, and you got 10 years left to work, that just,
notice
the percentages are the same, but the pain is different.
You notice.
Yes, you absolutely notice. And so, in 50% sounds dramatic. It happened in 2008, it happened in 2000, happened in the 80s, happened in the 70s. We're overdue for a 50% cut in the S&P 500.
Yeah.
And so the ability to take a step back and remove emotion and follow a process with some discipline is very, very important. And it becomes more important the older you are, and it becomes more important the more wealthy you are. This is why you'll see the more wealthy, if you look at a bell curve of the distribution of wealth, the wealthier people become, the higher percentage are working with an advisor. Because, and Dave, not to get religious, but he'll quote this all the time. In the multitude of counselors, there is wisdom. It's written right in Proverbs, in the multitude of counselors, there is wisdom. And so that's why when you start to see people get to that higher income and that higher net worth, hey, let's bring on a CPA so I'm not bearing the burden and the liability of doing my own tax return. Let's bring on somebody else who's going to manage and do the trades properly. Because again, if I got $1,000 and I mess up a trade, it's not that big a deal. But you throw an extra 6 zeros on the end of that, And that same mistake has much larger implications.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so a
financial team is really important.
100%. And that's where you see, so they did a study here last year that roughly 70% of millionaires are working with a financial advisor. So 70% is a pretty large number. And again, dude, and this might be a little offensive to some people out there listening, but for most of our folks, they would agree, like becoming a millionaire is, it's not even that big a deal anymore. This is not like the 80s where it's like, oh, they're a millionaire. Like, dude, a millionaire, especially to Dave's definition, is if you look at my assets and my liabilities, my assets are larger than my liabilities by $1 million or more. That's $1 million.
Just home values for a lot of people puts you pretty darn close.
Average home value across my base of pilots and clients, what have you, is right around $500,000. So that means I got $500,000 there. I'm debt free, and I got a $500,000 401k, and I'm a millionaire. It's an accomplishment, but like, dude, you're not retiring with that. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's like, a millionaire is not retirement ready for most of our folks, for sure.
It's not what it once was, for sure.
Yeah. And so, to me, I think, am I going to sit here and say, well, every single person needs to work with an advisor? I don't believe that. I definitely don't. But I do think as you get senior in your career, first of all, if you don't need to work with an advisor, but you should do the work then. Like, don't let the work go undone, right? There's a lot of resources out there, but at the end of the day, even with all the resources available, you still have the desire to go do the work. And so either go do the work or hire it out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like
right, because retirement's coming. So one way or another, it's got to get done.
Absolutely. In terms of your estate plan, your tax plan, getting your 401k set up properly to grow, getting all the right accounts set up. A lot of these things are not like rocket science, but I would say a large percentage of people I work with could absolutely be doing it on their own if they were passionate about it. But they're like, I just want to hire it out. It's no different it's a little bit of like,
right.
Like, I hire somebody to come like take care of our lawn. I don't have a lawnmower anymore. Like, I don't want to spend time doing that anymore. I hire it out. I'm more than capable of keeping a pristine lawn. I did it for
you said earlier, you said value earlier. Yeah. One of the things, what is your time value? What's valuable for your time, right? Yep. If it's no longer, cutting your own grass, then let somebody else do it. Exactly. It's not a status thing. It's what's my time worth? I got 7 kids. Well, not me, but you. I got 7 kids, right? So I don't have to. Although somebody might say make one of the kids do it, but
I know I should. So, but it's just one of those things, and that I think it's a personal decision. But again, as you grow, and you get closer to retirement, the complexity increases.
Oh, without a doubt,
significantly.
Building wealth is a lot easier than distributing it.
For sure,
if I could talk right.
Yeah. Well, and then also, there's a lot of times where if you do one thing, it impacts other things, or not doing something it has a second and third order effect, and so you want to make sure that you've thought through those scenarios, and I think where, from a retirement planning standpoint specifically, if I'm doing it on my own, I'm probably figuring it out on my own for the first time. And the trial and error is done on myself, and not without any other supervision and whatever the case is. So, or if I go talk with somebody who, knows my, is an expert in the space that I'm retiring from. They know our plan, they know our benefits, they know Social Security, and they know this, they know that. And then it's like, okay, well, this is the 30th plan that they've done this year, and maybe the 300th in their career. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of swagging the numbers for my own career, and like, that. There's some best practices and some discipline and some process that comes from working with somebody who does it all the time. And our pilots know that more than anybody, you know what I mean? Because they know, hey, they call it CRM, crew resource management. And one of my close friends out here flies for Delta, and, as he discusses, from a CRM perspective, hey, I like having the same routes because it keeps my workload easier. It keeps my process cleaner, and it makes work a lot less stressful. And so for him, he likes that. You know what I mean? Whereas if you're constantly getting on a new aircraft with a new co-pilot, flying new routes with a different airline, obviously your stress level would be huge because all the processes are different. That's a little bit of what retirement is like.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you can't do your job, but it adds more layers of complexity.
And the likelihood of mistakes goes way up.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
Yeah. I had heart surgery years ago, and I joked with the doctor, and I was like, well, I was like, hey, top of the class. He's like, I'm top of my class, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, great, but I could tell he was a little older. So he'd also been doing it for a while. Top of the class. And maybe this is the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth heart surgery you've done. Makes you a little more nervous than the top of the class that this is his 400th,
Absolutely.
kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But I guess you could kind of frame it anyway. You could kind of say it's also old hat, so therefore he's maybe willing to cut corners, right? There's always ways to look at it. So whether you're a DIY person or not, I think to your point, whenever we're trying to build wealth, it's definitely a little easier. And there's a lot of resources out there to do your own retirement. But if you've never done it before, there's also a lot of pitfalls and potholes to step into. So. And that's the time of life you don't want to be making mistakes because you don't have the time to recover. So.
Well, and you don't have the time, and the mistakes are much more painful. And so it's
farm it out, man. Farm it out.
And I mean, there's another aspect to it. I know we got to run for time here, but the other aspect to it is bias.
And this
ability,
today's day and age,
the ability to look at something without bias is very challenging.
It's virtually impossible.
Yeah.
To be unbiased about your own money is almost impossible.
Well, and again, back to, talking about our pilots, a lot of what the guys talk about and a lot of their training is built around, resisting their own bias. And, again, the two pilots talking to each other helps to eliminate bias in their decision making and how they're handling problems and reacting. And that pilot's co-pilot discussion to eliminate bias in combination with following checklists and procedure, there's a lot of power in that. Obviously,
there you go.
That's retirement working with a professional too. So
exactly.
Versus like, hey, this is the way I've always done it. I've always been invested like this. What I've done in the past will work in the future. And I know, pride can get in the way. You have all sorts of bias that come in, and versus taking a step back and just saying like, hey, how do I apply, good science and math and process to what I'm doing, and use some time-tested principles for planning versus my own bias. And then I go and shoot myself in the foot after I'm done working and I don't have time to recover. So,
yeah, exactly. Well, look, this week on the episode, we were talking about some of Dave's stuff. Dave's got a lot of great tips for folks out there, but it is really broad a lot of times. And he does take stances, against things that may not work well for you, may not work well for you, right? So sitting down with somebody and really kind of going through each individual product and the different kind of ways that it could affect you, that's the importance of having a strategy and sitting down and getting a plan put together. So if you need some help with that, reach out to Scott. As always, you can get onto his calendar, have a chat with him. You can do it over, virtually or, come into the office, whatever you want to do. But we got the links down below in the show description for you to check out his website and get yourself some time on the calendar. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, whatever platform you enjoy using. Hit that subscribe button, that thumbs up, and ring that notification bell to catch new episodes when they come out. And Scott, my friend, thanks for breaking it down. We'll see you next time here on the show.
We'll see you soon.
I always appreciate your time right here on the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with Scott Osborn.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.